The Vakari flagship Iron Fang was not a place for soft things. It was a ship made of dark metal and sharp edges. The walls were cold. The floors were hard. Everything on this ship was built for warriors, and the Vakari were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They stood 7 feet tall. Their skin was covered in thick scales that could stop a blade. Their teeth were long and sharp like knives. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dark. For thousands of years, the Vakari had conquered planets and defeated enemies. They feared nothing and no one. So when the Galactic Alliance told them they had to accept a human on their ship, Commander Rovan was not happy. Humans were strange creatures. They were small and soft. They had no claws, no fangs, no scales. Their skin was thin and easy to cut. Rovan did not understand how such weak beings had survived in the galaxy. But the Alliance said this was part of a new program. Different species needed to learn about each other. A human would live on the Iron Fang for 1 year. Her name was Yuna. She arrived on a small transport ship with 2 bags and a warm smile. Rovan looked down at her from his great height. She barely reached his chest. Her hair was black and straight, and her eyes were dark brown. She bowed politely and said hello in the Vakari language. Her accent was terrible, but she tried hard. Rovan grunted and told one of his officers to show her to her quarters. The crew watched Yuna walk through the corridors. They whispered to each other. What was this tiny creature doing on a warship? She would break if someone bumped into her too hard. Some of the younger warriors laughed quietly. This human would not last long, but Yuna did not seem afraid. She smiled at everyone she passed. She asked questions about the ship. She learned the names of the crew members and remembered them. Slowly, very slowly, some of the Vakari began to think she was not so bad. She was strange, yes, but she was polite and kind. Yuna's quarters were small but comfortable. She was allowed to bring some items from Earth. She brought books, pictures of her family, and most importantly, she brought blankets. Lots and lots of blankets. On Earth, Yuna had always loved soft things. Her bed back home had been covered with quilts and pillows and fluffy covers. When she was a child, her grandmother would tuck her in every night and sing old songs. Yuna never forgot that feeling of warmth and safety. So, even here, on this cold metal ship full of predators, she made her room feel like home. Her bed was piled high with blankets of different colors, blue ones, green ones, thick ones, thin ones. When she crawled into bed at night, she felt like she was floating on a cloud. The Vakari did not understand this at all. They slept on hard thermal slabs. These were flat surfaces that gave off a little heat, but they were as hard as stone. The Vakari believed that comfort made you weak. If a warrior slept on something soft, his body would become lazy. His mind would become slow. A true predator needed to be ready to fight at any moment, even in sleep. Their children learned this rule from the day they were born. Vakari cubs slept on small thermal slabs in the nursery. They were not given blankets or pillows. They were taught that hardship made them strong. Commander Rovan had 3 cubs. Kiro was the oldest. He was 6 years old in human time. He was bold and stubborn, always trying to prove he was brave. Vel was the middle child, 4 years old. He was curious about everything and always getting into trouble. Nyx was the youngest, only 2 years old. She was small and easily scared, always crying for her mother. One day, there was a safety drill on the ship. Alarms rang through the corridors. Crew members ran to their stations. It was very loud and very busy. In the nursery, the caretaker was supposed to watch the cubs. But during the confusion, she was called away for just a few minutes. Kiro saw his chance. He had been wanting to explore the ship for weeks. His mother always said no. But now, no one was watching. He grabbed Vel's arm. Come on, let's go see the ship. Vel's eyes went wide. We will get in trouble, only if they catch us, Kiro said with a sharp grin. Nyx saw her brothers leaving and started to follow. She did not want to be left alone. The 3 cubs slipped out of the nursery and into the corridor. The ship was huge. The cubs had never been outside the family areas before. Everything looked the same to them. Metal walls, metal floors, metal doors. They walked and walked, turning left and right, until they had no idea where they were. Nix began to whimper. "I want to go back. We will find our way," Kiro said. But he did not sound sure anymore. They came to a corridor they did not recognize. Most of the doors were closed. But one door was open just a little bit. Light came from inside. Kiro walked toward it. Slowly, he pushed the door open and looked inside. It was the strangest room he had ever seen. There were colorful things everywhere. Pictures on the walls. Books on a shelf. And in the corner, there was something that made all three cubs stop and stare. A bed, but not like any bed they had ever seen. This bed was covered in soft, fluffy things. Mountains of fabric in beautiful colors. It looked like a nest made of clouds. Vel pushed past his brother and walked toward the bed. He reached out, one clawed hand, and touched the blanket on top. His eyes went wide. "It is so soft," he whispered. Kiro touched it too. The fabric was like nothing he had ever felt. It was warm and gentle against his scales. On the thermal slabs, he always felt the hardness pressing against his body. But this was different. This felt like being held. Nix did not wait. She climbed onto the bed and crawled under the covers. The blankets swallowed her small body. Only her face was visible. And for the first time in a long time, she was not crying, she was smiling. "Nix, get down from there," Kiro said. But his voice was weak. The bed looked so inviting. Vel climbed up next. He pulled a blanket over himself and let out a long, happy sigh. "Kiro, you have to try this." Kiro looked at the door. They should leave. They should go back to the nursery. If their parents found them here, in a human's room, sleeping on human things, there would be big trouble. But the blankets looked so nice. And he was so tired. Just for a minute, he told himself. Just to see what it feels like. He climbed onto the bed and lay down between his siblings. He pulled a heavy blanket over his body. The weight of it was comforting. The softness wrapped around him like a hug. Within seconds, all three cubs were asleep. They did not hear the alarm stop. They did not hear the crew returning to normal duties. They did not hear anything at all. They just slept, deeper and more peacefully than they had ever slept in their lives. When Yuna returned to her quarters an hour later, she stopped in the doorway. Her mouth fell open. Three small predators were curled up in her bed. Their scales were gray and green. Their little claws poked out from under the blankets, and they were making a sound she had never heard before. It was low and rumbling, like a motor running. They were purring. Yuna covered her mouth to stop herself from laughing. She did not know whose children these were, or how they had gotten in here. But she knew one thing for certain. She was not going to wake them up. She quietly stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She sat down in her chair and watched the cubs sleep. They looked so peaceful, so happy, so different from the fierce warriors she saw in the corridors every day. Maybe, she thought, predators were not so different from everyone else. Maybe everyone, no matter how strong or scary, needed a little softness sometimes. She pulled out a book and began to read, letting the cubs rest. Outside, the ship continued on its path through the stars. And somewhere in the nursery, a caretaker was about to realize that 3 small children were missing. The alarm spread through the ship faster than fire. 3 cubs were missing. Not just any cubs. The children of Commander Rovan himself. Every warrior on the Iron Fang began searching. They checked the engine rooms. They checked the storage bays. They checked every corridor and every corner. Rovan stood on the command deck, his hands gripped tight behind his back. His yellow eyes burned with worry. But his face showed nothing. A commander did not show fear. Not even for his own children. His mate, Thessa, was not so calm. She ran through the ship herself, calling out the names of her cubs. Thessa was a decorated warrior. She had fought in 12 battles and never lost. But right now, she was just a mother looking for her babies. One of the search teams reported that they had checked the humans' corridor. All doors were closed. No sign of the cubs. But Thessa did not trust that report. Something in her gut told her to look again. She made her way to that corridor herself. She walked past door after door until she came to the quarters of the human, called Una. The door was closed. Tessa pressed her ear against it and listened. She heard purring. Her blood ran cold. She knew that sound. That was the sound her cubs made when they were deeply asleep. But why would they be in a human's room? She hit the door panel and stepped inside. The sight that met her eyes made her freeze. Her 3 children were tangled together on the human's bed, buried under piles of soft fabric. Their little bodies rose and fell with peaceful breaths. The human, Una, sat in a chair nearby with a book in her hands. She looked up at Tessa and smiled nervously. "They found their way in here during the drill," Una said softly. "I did not want to wake them. They looked so tired." Tessa could not speak. Her mind was spinning. This was wrong. This was so very wrong. Her children, the heirs of a proud warrior bloodline, were sleeping on human fabric. They were wrapped in soft things, surrounded by the strange smells of an alien. In Vakari culture, this was shameful. Comfort was weakness. That was the first rule every Vakari child learned. If you made yourself soft, your enemies would destroy you. If you depended on gentle things, you would not survive the hard times. A Vakari warrior slept on stone and woke ready to fight. And here were her cubs, sleeping like helpless babies in a nest of clouds. "Get up," Tessa said, her voice sharp and cold. "All of you, get up now." The cubs stirred. Nyx opened her eyes first. When she saw her mother standing there with that angry face, she began to cry. Vel sat up quickly, the blanket falling from his shoulders. Kiro tried to look brave, but his tail was tucked between his legs. "Mother, we just wanted to see," Kiro started. "Silence," Tessa said. "You will come with me. Now." She grabbed Nyx and pulled Vel by the arm. Kiro followed behind, his head hanging low. As they left, Tessa looked back at Una one more time. Her eyes were full of something between anger and confusion. "Stay away from my children," she said. Then she was gone. Una sat alone in her room, staring at the empty bed. The blankets were messy now, pushed around by small clawed hands. She could still see the shapes where the cubs had been lying. She had not meant to cause trouble. She had only wanted to let them rest. Back in the family quarters, Tessa told Rovan everything. The commander listened without expression. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "They slept well?" he asked finally. "That is not the point," Tessa said. "They were in a human's room, on human bedding. What will the crew think? What will the elders say?" Rovan nodded slowly. "You are right. This cannot happen again. We will speak to the children." That night, the cubs were brought before their parents and given a long lecture about dignity and strength. Kiro was told that a future warrior does not seek comfort. Vel was told that curiosity is good, but foolishness is not. Nyx was too young to understand the words, but she understood the tone. Everyone was upset. The cubs were sent to the nursery to sleep on their thermal slabs as always. But something had changed. Kiro lay on his hard slab and stared at the ceiling. He could not stop thinking about those blankets. The way they had wrapped around him. The way they had made him feel safe. His slab felt colder than ever before. Harder than ever before. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. But sleep would not come. Vel was even worse. He tossed and turned on his slab, unable to get comfortable. Every position felt wrong. His scales scraped against the hard surface. He whimpered softly and scratched at the walls. He wanted to go back to that room. He wanted to feel those soft things again. Nyx screamed. Her cry was so loud that it echoed through the entire deck. It was a high-pitched wail, the kind that made everyone cover their ears. The caretaker rushed to her side. But nothing helped. Nyx screamed and would not stop. Tessa came running. She picked up her daughter and held her close, but Nyx kept crying. She would not be comforted. She wanted the blankets. She wanted the warmth. She wanted to feel safe again, like she had felt in the human's room. The night dragged on forever. By dawn, not one of the three cubs had slept. Their eyes were red and tired. Their little bodies were weak. And they were not the only ones who had suffered. The entire command crew had been kept awake by the noise. Everyone looked exhausted. Rovan stood on the command deck, his jaw tight with frustration. His officers moved slowly, their reactions dulled by lack of rest. This was not acceptable. A Vrikari ship needed to be ready for battle at all times. He called for Yuna. She arrived looking nervous. She was smart enough to know that she was somehow being blamed for this. "What did you do to my children?" Rovan asked. His voice was calm, but there was danger beneath it. "I did nothing," Yuna said. "They came to my room on their own. They found my blankets and fell asleep. That is all. Then why will they not sleep now?" Yuna thought about this carefully. She remembered her studies about different species in the galaxy. She remembered what she knew about young mammals and how they developed. "Commander," she said slowly, "I believe your cubs experienced something new, something their bodies liked very much. On Earth, young children need warmth and softness to feel safe. It helps their minds relax. It tells their bodies that it is okay to sleep. I think your cubs might be the same." Thessa stepped forward, her scales bristling. "We are not the same as you. We are Vrikari. We are predators. Our children do not need soft things." "With respect," Yuna said, "your children have not slept in over 20 hours. They cried all night. Something is wrong." Thessa opened her mouth to argue, but she could not find the words. She looked at her mate. Rovan's face was like stone. Another night passed. And then, another. The cubs did not sleep. Not really. They would close their eyes for a few minutes, then wake up crying or shaking. Their bodies were starting to fail. Nyx stopped eating. Vel became quiet and would not play. Even Kiro, the brave one, had dark circles under his eyes and could barely stand. The ship's medical officer examined them and gave Rovan a grim report. If they do not rest soon, their immune systems will begin to fail. They could become very sick. Rovan dismissed the medical officer and stood alone in his quarters. He was a warrior. He had faced armies. He had made life and death decisions without hesitation. But this was different. This was his children. Pride told him to stay strong. Tradition told him that comfort was weakness, but love told him something else. That night, he went to find Yuna. She was in her room, reading as usual. She looked up when he appeared in her doorway. He was so large that he had to duck to enter. "I need your help," he said. The words came out rough and hard, like they were fighting to stay inside. Yuna closed her book and stood up. She did not smile. She did not say, "I told you so." She just nodded. "What do you need?" she asked. Rovan looked at the pile of blankets on her bed. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, with great difficulty, he spoke. "My children need those, the soft things, the covers." He paused. "They need you to show them how to sleep." Yuna's eyes softened. She understood what this moment cost him. This proud warrior, this commander of thousands, was asking a small human woman for help with his babies. "I will help," she said. "I promise." She gathered 3 blankets from her bed, 1 heavy quilt for Kiro, 1 soft fleece for Vel, 1 small warm wrap for little Nyx. Together, she and Rovan walked to the nursery. It was time to teach the predator cubs how to rest. The nursery was dark and quiet when Yuna and Commander Rovan arrived. The only light came from the soft glow of the thermal slabs. 3 small shapes lay on those hard surfaces, not moving but not sleeping either. Kiro heard the door open. He lifted his heavy head and saw his father standing there with the human woman. In her arms were bundles of colorful fabric. His heart jumped in his chest. The blankets. She had brought the blankets. Vel sat up too. His tired eyes went wide when he saw what Yuna was carrying. Nyx was too weak to move, but she made a small sound when she smelled the familiar scent of the soft covers. Yuna walked forward slowly. She did not want to frighten the cubs. She knelt down beside Nyx first. because she was the smallest and the weakest. "Hello, little one," Yuna said in a soft voice. "I brought something for you." She spread the small, warm wrap over Nyx's body. It was light and gentle, made of fabric that held heat close to the skin. Nyx grabbed it with her tiny claws and pulled it up to her chin. Her yellow eyes looked up at Yuna, and there was something in them that had not been there before. Trust. Yuna tucked the edges of the wrap around Nyx, making sure no cold air could get in. Then she did something she had not planned to do. She started to hum. It was an old song, one her grandmother used to sing back on Earth. The words were in Korean, and they spoke of mountains and rivers and peaceful sleep. Yuna did not sing the words out loud. She just hummed the melody, low and gentle, like the purring of a cat. Nyx's eyes began to close. Within 1 minute, she was asleep. Rovan watched from the doorway. His face showed nothing, but inside he was amazed. For 3 days, his daughter had screamed and cried. Nothing had worked. No amount of holding or rocking or talking had helped. And now, this small human had put her to sleep in less than a minute with a piece of fabric and a song. Yuna moved to Vel next. She gave him the soft fleece blanket. It was thicker than Nyx's wrap, with a fuzzy texture that felt nice against scales. Vel grabbed it immediately and buried his face in it. "Is this really mine?" he asked. His voice was muffled by the blanket. "It is yours," Yuna said. "You can keep it." She tucked the blanket around him just as she had done for his sister. She hummed the same tune. Vel's eyes grew heavy. He tried to stay awake because he wanted to enjoy the feeling longer, but his body would not listen. Sleep took him gently, like a wave pulling him out to sea. Finally, Yuna came to Kiro. He was sitting up on his slab, watching her with careful eyes. He was the oldest. He understood more than his siblings did. He knew that accepting this blanket meant something. It meant admitting that he needed soft things to sleep. It meant breaking the rules. Yuna held out the heavy quilt. It was dark blue with patterns of silver stitched into it. It looked like the night sky over Earth. "This one is for you," she said. Kiro looked at the quilt. Then he looked at his father, still standing in the doorway. Rovan said nothing. He gave no order. He just nodded once, very slightly. That small nod was enough. Kiro took the quilt and spread it over his body. It was heavier than he expected, but the weight felt good. It pressed down on him like a warm hug, telling his body that it was safe to relax. Yuna tucked him in. She hummed her song, and Kiro, who had been fighting sleep for 3 days, finally let go. He slept. The nursery was silent now. 3 cubs lay peacefully under their blankets, their breath slow and steady. The purring sound returned, rumbling through the room like distant thunder. Yuna stood up and turned to face Rovan. She was not sure what to say. She had done what he asked, but she did not know how he felt about it. To her surprise, Rovan's eyes were different. The hardness was still there, but something else was mixed in. Something that might have been gratitude. "Thank you," he said. The words sounded strange coming from him, like he was not used to saying them. "You do not need to thank me," Yuna said. "Children should not suffer when there is an easy way to help them." Rovan was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Will they sleep through the night?" "I think so. But they will need this every night from now on. The blankets, the tucking in. It has become their routine. Their minds now expect it." "You mean they have become dependent on these things?" Yuna shook her head. "Not dependent. Comforted. There is a difference. A warrior can be comforted at night and still be strong in the morning. Rest is not weakness, Commander. Rest is how bodies heal and minds grow." Rovan did not argue. He looked at his sleeping children one more time. Then he left the nursery without another word. Thessa was waiting for him in the corridor. Her arms were crossed, and her face was troubled. "I saw what happened," she said. "The human put them to sleep." "Yes. With fabric and a song." "Yes." Thessa uncrossed her arms and let out a long breath. "I do not understand humans. I do not understand how such soft creatures have survived in this galaxy." They have no fangs, no claws, no armor, yet they seem to know things we do not. Rovan thought about this. Perhaps that is why the Alliance wanted us to learn from them. Not because they are strong like us, but because they are strong in different ways. The next morning, the cubs woke up refreshed and happy. They bounced around the nursery with energy they had not had in days. They ate their food, they played with their toys, they were healthy again. But when night came, they refused to sleep on their thermal slabs. Kiro stood by his slab with his arms crossed. "I want Yuna to tuck me in," Vel nodded. "With the blankets. And the song." "Who?" Nyx just pointed at the door and made demanding noises. Thessa tried to be firm. "You will sleep on your slabs, like proper Vrekari cubs." But the moment she turned off the lights, the crying started. Not screaming this time, but sad, pitiful cries that broke her heart. These were not just sounds of fear. They were sounds of need. Thessa sent for Yuna. The human came and did the same thing she had done the night before. She tucked each cub into their blanket. She hummed her song. And they fell asleep. This became the routine. Every night, Yuna would come to the nursery. Every night, she would perform the ritual of tucking in. And every night, the cubs would sleep peacefully until morning. Word began to spread through the ship. The commander's cubs would not sleep without the human. They needed her blankets and her song. To some, this was scandalous. The great warrior Rovan had allowed his children to become soft. The ship's council called a meeting to discuss the situation. 12 elders sat in a circle, their yellow eyes glowing in the dim light. "This is unacceptable," said one elder. "Our young must be raised in the traditional way. Hardship builds strength." "The cubs are not learning hardship," said another. "They are learning to need human comforts. This will weaken them. What happens when they grow up? Will they still need blankets and songs to function? This is shameful." The voices went back and forth. Some agreed with the elders, some were not sure. But no one spoke in favor of the humans' methods. Until Rovan stood up. The room went silent. The commander walked to the center of the circle and looked at each elder in turn. "My children were dying," he said. His voice was calm but heavy. "For 3 days, they did not sleep. The medical officer said their bodies were failing. I had a choice. I could let my pride kill my children, or I could accept help." He paused. "But the tradition," one elder started. "Tradition is meant to make us stronger," Rovan interrupted. "If a tradition makes our children sick, then it is not a good tradition. My cubs are healthy now. They are happy. They are growing. That is what matters." The room was silent. No one dared to argue with the commander. But Yuna could see that many of them still did not agree. She stepped forward. "May I speak?" The elders looked at her with surprise. "A human, daring to address the council?" Rovan nodded. "Speak." Yuna took a breath. "I know that the Vrekari are proud and strong. I have seen your warriors train. I have seen your ships in battle formations. You have built an empire through hardness and discipline. I respect that." She paused. "But hardness is not the only kind of strength. On Earth, we learned long ago that rest is just as important as training. A tired soldier makes mistakes. A well-rested soldier fights better. Your cubs are not becoming weak because they have soft blankets. They are becoming strong because they are finally sleeping." The elders murmured among themselves. Yuna continued, "I am not asking you to change your whole culture. I am only asking you to let your children rest. When they grow up, they can choose whether to sleep on hard slabs or soft beds. But right now, they are small. They need comfort. That is not weakness. That is nature." She stopped talking. The room was very quiet. Then, slowly, one of the older elders nodded. He was the oldest of them all. With gray scales and tired eyes. "The human speaks wisdom," he said. "We have always believed that pain teaches strength. But perhaps peace teaches something too. I say we allow this for now. Let us watch the cubs and see how they grow." The other elders agreed, though some did so unwillingly. The meeting ended. Yuna walked back to her quarters with a small smile on her face. She had won this battle. But she knew the real work was just beginning. News traveled fast on a ship full of warriors. Within days, everyone on the Iron Fang knew about the commander's cubs and their strange new bedtime routine. The story was whispered in the mess hall. It was discussed during training sessions. It was debated in late-night conversations. And it spread to other ships. The Vakari fleet had dozens of vessels, all connected by communication channels. Warriors talked to their families back home. Officers shared reports with other officers. Soon, the story of the human and her magic blankets was known across the entire fleet. At first, most Vakari laughed at it. The great Commander Rovan, brought low by a human woman and some soft fabric. His cubs, too weak to sleep, without being tucked in like babies. It was embarrassing. It was shameful. But then something strange started to happen. Other parents began to wonder. A warrior named Dara served on a patrol ship near the edge of Vakari space. She had 2 cubs of her own, both young. Every night, her cubs had trouble sleeping. They would cry and scratch at their slabs. They would wake up tired and cranky. Dara had always thought this was normal. All Vakari cubs struggled with sleep. That was just how it was, but now she was not so sure. She sent a private message to Commander Rovan's ship. She did not ask to speak with the commander himself. That would have been too bold. Instead, she asked to speak with the human cultural liaison. Yuna received the message with surprise. It was the first time anyone from outside the ship had contacted her. She accepted the call. Dara appeared on the screen, looking nervous. "I heard about what you did for the commander's children," she said. "I need to know if it is true." "It is true," Yuna said. "What would you like to know?" "My cubs do not sleep well. They never have. Our medical officers say there is nothing wrong with them. But every night is a battle. I am tired. My mate is tired. The cubs are tired." Dara's voice cracked. "Is there something wrong with us? Are our children broken?" Yuna felt her heart ache for this mother. "No," she said firmly. "Your children are not broken. They just need something that Vakari tradition does not allow them to have." "What?" "Comfort." Yuna explained everything she had learned. She talked about how young mammals needed warmth and softness to feel safe. She talked about how the brain relaxed when the body was comfortable. She talked about how sleep was not just resting, but healing. Dara listened with wide eyes. This was all so new to her. No one had ever spoken about sleep this way. "What can I do?" Dara asked. "I can help you make something. We call them comfort wraps. They are blankets designed for Vakari bodies. Your scales need something different than human skin. But the idea is the same: soft, warm, and safe." Yuna worked with the Iron Fang's fabrication unit to create a design. The outer layer was made of a material that felt good against scales. The inner layer was soft and held heat well. The whole thing was sized for Vakari cubs. She sent the design to Dara's ship. 3 days later, Dara sent another message. She was crying, but they were happy tears. "They slept," she said. "Both of them. The whole night. For the first time in their lives." More messages started coming in. Parents from ships all across the fleet had heard about the comfort wraps. They wanted to know how to make them. They wanted to know if it was really true that their cubs could sleep through the night. Yuna answered every message. She helped every parent who asked. She never charged anything. She never asked for credit. She just wanted to help. The change was slow at first. Only a few brave parents tried the comfort wraps. They did it secretly, afraid of what others would think. But when their cubs started sleeping better, when their families became happier, they could not keep it a secret anymore. The word spread faster now, not as gossip, but as hope. Parents who had suffered through years of sleepless nights suddenly had peace. Cubs who had always been cranky and aggressive became calm and playful. The whole mood of the fleet began to shift, but not everyone was happy. The traditionalists, the warriors who held the old ways sacred, were angry. They saw the comfort wraps as a sign of weakness. They said the fleet was becoming soft. They blamed the human for corrupting their culture. One elder, a fierce warrior named Torak, spoke out at a fleet-wide council meeting. "We are Vrekari," he said, his voice booming across the channel. "We are predators. Our ancestors conquered 100 worlds by being hard and strong. Now we wrap our children in soft fabric like newborn prey? This is a disgrace." Many warriors nodded in agreement. The debate grew heated. Some said the comfort wraps should be banned. Others said parents should be allowed to choose. Then something unexpected happened. The fleet's combat readiness scores came in. Every month, the ships were tested on their battle performance. Response times, accuracy, coordination, all of it measured and compared. This month, the scores were higher than they had been in years. The officers were confused. Nothing had changed in their training. Their equipment was the same. Their strategies were the same. So why were they performing better? The answer was simple. The parents were sleeping. For generations, Vrekari parents had suffered through sleepless nights with their cubs. They had gone to their duty stations, exhausted and slow. They had made small mistakes because their minds were foggy. They had been operating at half strength, without even realizing it. Now, with their cubs sleeping peacefully, the parents could rest too. They woke up refreshed. They worked faster. They made fewer errors. The whole fleet was operating better because people were finally getting enough sleep. Torak could not argue with the numbers. Neither could the other traditionalists. The evidence was too clear. The comfort wraps were not making the fleet weak. They were making it stronger. After that, the resistance faded. Some still grumbled about the old ways, but they did not try to stop the changes. The comfort wraps spread to every ship. The fabrication units produced them by the thousands. Soon, it was normal for Vrekari cubs to sleep under soft blankets. Through all of this, Yuna stayed humble. She did not brag or celebrate. She just kept answering messages and helping parents. One evening, she was in her quarters when someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find Thessa standing there. The warrior mother looked different now. Softer somehow, though that seemed like a strange word to use for a 7-foot predator covered in scales. Her yellow eyes were warm. "May I come in?" Thessa asked. Yuna stepped aside and let her enter. Thessa looked around the room. She saw the pictures on the walls, the books on the shelves, and the bed with its pile of blankets. She stood there for a long moment, not speaking. Then she did something Yuna had never seen a Vrekari do. She bowed her head. "I was wrong about you," Thessa said. "When you first came to this ship, I thought you were weak. I thought you had nothing to teach us. I was angry when my children fell asleep in your bed. I thought you had done something shameful to them." She raised her head and looked Yuna in the eyes. "But you did not shame them. You gave them something they needed. Something I could not give them. Because I did not know it existed." Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes, but she held them back. "I only did what any mother would do," she said. "I saw children who needed rest, so I helped them rest." "That is exactly it," Thessa said. "You saw them as children first. Not as future warriors, not as heirs to a bloodline, just as small beings who needed care." She paused. "I had forgotten how to see them that way." Thessa reached into a pouch at her side and pulled out something. It was a small piece of fabric, woven in the Vrekari style. But the colors were soft, and the texture was gentle. "I made this," Thessa said. "It is not as good as yours, but I wanted to try. I wanted to make something soft with my own hands." She held it out to Yuna. "It is for you. So you know that I understand now. Rest is not weakness. Softness is not shame. You taught me that. Human. And I will never forget it." Yuna took the fabric. It was rough in some places and uneven in others, but it was beautiful. It was proof that even the hardest warrior could learn to be gentle. "Thank you," Yuna whispered. "This means more to me than you know." Thessa nodded once. Then she turned and left, without another word. Yuna sat down on her bed and held the fabric to her chest. Outside her window, the stars drifted past, cold and distant. But in this small room on a warship full of predators, she felt warmer than she had ever felt in her life. The fleet was changing. The cubs were sleeping. And somewhere out there in the galaxy, other species were hearing stories about the humans who taught the Vrekari how to rest. Maybe that was the real gift humans had to offer the galaxy. Not weapons or technology or strength, just the simple knowledge that everyone, no matter how fierce or proud, deserves a moment of peace. 1 year had passed since Yuna first stepped onto the Iron Fang. It felt like a lifetime ago. Back then, she had been a stranger on a ship full of predators. Now she was something else entirely. She was family. The Galactic Alliance called her assignment a success. More than a success. They said it was one of the best cultural exchanges in the history of the program. Diplomats and scholars wanted to study what had happened. How had one small human changed an entire warrior culture? Yuna did not think she had changed anything. She had just shared what she knew. The Vrekari had done the rest themselves. Now she was being invited to the Vrekari homeworld. There would be a ceremony to honor her contributions to the Alliance. Ambassadors from dozens of species would attend. It was a big deal, but Yuna was nervous. She had never been to the Vrekari homeworld before. She had never seen more than a few hundred Vrekari at one time. Now, she would be standing in front of thousands. The transport ship landed on a wide platform made of dark stone. Yuna stepped out and looked around. The Vrekari homeworld was beautiful in a harsh way. The sky was deep purple with streaks of orange. The buildings were tall and sharp, made of black metal that gleamed in the double suns. Everything looked strong and ancient. A crowd had gathered to meet her. Yuna froze when she saw them. There were so many Vrekari. Warriors in armor. Families with children. Elders with gray scales and wise eyes. They filled the platform and spilled out into the streets beyond, and many of them were carrying blankets. Yuna could not believe what she was seeing. Vrekari adults holding comfort wraps in their arms. Cubs clutching small blankets against their chests. The soft fabrics came in every color: red, blue, green, silver. They looked strange next to the hard scales and sharp teeth, but somehow they also looked right. A young cub broke free from the crowd and ran toward her. Then another. Then 3 more. Soon a whole group of small Vrekari were rushing across the platform, their little feet slapping against the stone. 3 of them reached her first. They were bigger now, taller, their scales darker than she remembered. But she knew them instantly. Kiro, Vel, Nyx. They crashed into her with all the force of young predators who had not yet learned to control their strength. Yuna stumbled backward but did not fall. She wrapped her arms around them and held on tight. "Yuna," Vel shouted. "You came back." "I told you she would come," Kiro said, trying to sound calm but failing. His tail was wagging like a happy dog. Nyx did not say anything. She just buried her face in Yuna's stomach and held on. In her other arm, she clutched a familiar piece of fabric. It was the same small wrap Yuna had given her a year ago. It was worn and frayed now, the colors faded from washing. But Nyx had kept it all this time. Yuna's eyes filled with tears. "I missed you so much," she whispered. "All of you." Commander Rovan and Thessa approached more slowly. They were dressed in ceremonial armor, shining and impressive. But their eyes were soft as they watched their children embrace the human. Rovan spoke first. "You look well, Yuna." "Thank you, Commander." "So do you." She wiped her eyes and tried to look professional. "Thank you for inviting me here." "We did not invite you," Thessa said. "We demanded you. The Alliance wanted to send someone else to give a speech. We told them no. It had to be you." Yuna laughed. "That sounds like something you would do." The ceremony was held in a great hall at the center of the capital city. The ceiling was so high that Yuna could barely see it. Torches burned along the walls, casting dancing shadows across the stone floor. Thousands of Vrekari filled the seats, and among them sat ambassadors from a dozen other species. Yuna stood on a raised platform at the front of the hall. She felt very small, surrounded by so many large predators. But she also felt safe. These were not strangers anymore. These were friends. An elder stood and called for silence. The hall went quiet. "We are gathered here to honor a human named Yuna," the elder said. "1 year ago, she came to our flagship as part of a cultural exchange. What happened next changed our people in ways we never expected." The elder turned to face the crowd. "For generations, we believed that hardship was the only path to strength. We made our children sleep on hard slabs. We denied them comfort. We thought we were preparing them for a difficult galaxy." He paused. "We were wrong." A murmur went through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable. "This human showed us another way," the elder continued. "She showed us that rest is not weakness. She showed us that comfort does not destroy strength. She showed us that even predators need peace." He turned back to Yuna. "Because of you, our cubs sleep through the night. Our parents wake up refreshed. Our warriors fight better. Our fleet is stronger than it has been in decades. And all of this happened because you were brave enough to share a blanket." The crowd laughed at that. Even Yuna smiled. The elder waved his hand, and 2 figures stepped forward. Rovan and Thessa, carrying objects in their arms. "We wish to give you 2 gifts," the elder said. "The first is a ceremonial blade. It is the highest honor of Rekari can give to an outsider. With this blade, we name you a friend of our people. You will always be welcome on our worlds. You will always have a place among us." Thessa stepped forward and presented the blade. It was beautiful, made of dark metal with patterns of gold along the edge. Yuna took it carefully, feeling its weight in her hands. "Thank you," she said. "I will treasure this forever." "The second gift is something new," the elder said. "We made it ourselves, using your designs but woven from our own fibers." Rovan stepped forward. In his massive arms was a blanket. It was made in the Vrekari style, with geometric patterns and bold colors. But the fabric was soft and warm. Nothing like the hard materials the Vrekari usually used. "This is for you," Rovan said, "so that you may rest among us. You gave comfort to our children. Now we give comfort to you." Yuna's hands shook as she took the blanket. She pressed it against her face and breathed in deeply. It smelled like the ship, like metal and warmth and something that might have been home. She could not stop the tears this time. They rolled down her cheeks as she stood before the crowd, holding a blade in one hand and a blanket in the other. "Thank you," she managed to say. "All of you. Thank you." The crowd began to clap. It was strange to see Vrekari clapping, their clawed hands coming together in a rhythm that was not quite human. But the meaning was clear. They were grateful. They were proud. They were showing her that she mattered. After the ceremony, there was a celebration. Food and drink and music filled the hall. Yuna was surrounded by Vrekari, who wanted to thank her, to shake her hand, to tell her stories about how the comfort wraps had changed their families. A young journalist approached her near the end of the night. He was holding a recording device, his eyes eager. "May I ask you a question for my report?" he asked. Yuna nodded. "Of course. What do you think humans have truly given the galaxy? Your species is small and soft. You have no fangs or claws. Yet everywhere you go, you seem to make things better. Why is that?" Yuna thought about the question for a long time. She thought about her grandmother tucking her into bed. She thought about the cubs sleeping peacefully under their blankets. She thought about all the messages from parents across the fleet, thanking her for giving them hope. "Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy," she said finally. "We are not the fastest or the smartest. We do not have the best technology or the biggest ships. But we learned something long ago that others are still figuring out." "What is that?" "That survival is not just about fighting. It is about resting too. It is about creating moments of peace in the middle of hardship. We give ourselves permission to be soft, even when the universe is hard." She smiled. "Maybe that is what we have to offer. Not weapons or power, but something much simpler. The knowledge that everyone, no matter who they are, deserves to feel safe and warm." The journalist nodded slowly. He looked like he was thinking hard about her words. Outside the hall, the double suns were setting over the Vrekari homeworld. The sky turned from purple to deep black, and the stars came out one by one. Yuna found a quiet corner on a balcony overlooking the city. She wrapped herself in the blanket the Vrekari had made for her and watched the lights come on in the buildings below. She heard small footsteps behind her. She turned to see Nyx standing there, still clutching her old worn blanket. "Are you leaving soon?" Nyx asked. Her voice was small and worried. Yuna knelt down to meet her eyes. "I have to go back to Earth for a little while, but I will come visit you again. I promise." "You will?" "I will, as often as I can." Nyx was quiet for a moment. Then she held out her blanket. "Take this with you, so you do not forget us." Yuna's heart nearly broke. "I could never forget you, little one. Keep your blanket. You need it, but I have a new one now. Mother made it for me." Nyx pushed the old blanket into Yuna's hands. "This one has you in it. I want you to have it." Nyxport. Yuna took the blanket. It was so small in her hands, so worn from love. She held it against her chest like it was the most precious thing in the galaxy. Because it was, she pulled Nyx into a hug and held her tight. Behind them, Kiro and Vel appeared, followed by Rovan and Thessa. They all stood together on the balcony, a strange little family made up of predators and one small human. The stars shone above them, cold and ancient. Ships moved across the sky like slow-moving fireflies. Somewhere out there, other species were hearing stories about the Vrekari and their blankets. Some probably laughed, some probably did not understand. But here, on this balcony, surrounded by friends, Yuna understood everything. This was what humans gave the galaxy. Not technology, not strength, not power. Just the simple truth that even in a universe full of danger and darkness, everyone deserved a warm place to rest. The cubs leaned against her, already getting sleepy. Their parents watched with soft eyes, and Yuna, wrapped in her new blanket and holding the old one close, felt something she had not felt since leaving Earth. She felt like she was home.